everyone here and appreciate you being here. I guess if I turn on my mic. All right. Okay. Very good. All right. Cameron, you're on.
Before Cameron says something, can I just quickly tell you that I'll explain these later. Cameron, I'll give you some. These are from me and not from Cameron. So
Okay.
just wanted
Great.
the council to know.
Okay, thanks.
They're alternatives.
Okay, great.
You know how to make a fun summer look, don't you?
Actually was thinking that when I made it.
Yeah.
Every,
Remember all of the,
plug in here.
every council member, and we sat through them, and we ground
from
through them.
April, May was always about health insurance. All that stuff.
That would have been compensation committee meeting.
Now we have a compensation committee that brings to the highlights. We have
Okay, I don't know.
Go for it.
All right, so the budget committee meeting was yesterday, and I had been asked prior to that to try to put together some ideas about the budget calendar for this coming year. And so I've got one up on the screen. I had distributed one, or a couple actually, yesterday to the budget committee to get some feedback there. And so the one I've got up right now is what was draft 2 from yesterday. And it was trying to outline and walk through major concepts that we would have in a budget setting process, and meeting some of the deadlines and addressing ideas and concepts from the Senate Bill 162. And so if I walk you through this quickly, we're just, as we said in our last meeting, we're at the cusp of getting started at this process. So before July 1st, it would be a time when we go through with departments kind of updating that capital improvements plan. If you recall, that has been submitted to the council with the budget, so you have it in the current year plus 3 succeeding years. That would be updated for the current year, or at least we would start that process. And then starting in July, we would start working with departments on their specific requests that they want to request for the coming budget year. And we'd have those due back to the Finance Department by July 11th, with compilation then by the Finance Department, including related revenues, to the County Executive by July 25th. And this is where things started looking at maybe there was some different options. And the one I have up here right now is an option for a one-day budget retreat kind of concept, where the departments would come to present their concept of the budget that they've worked with the county executive on to the county council on a one day, and you'd start in the morning and you'd have a couple breaks, you'd have a lunch, and at the end of the day you had been through all of the departments of the county. We discussed some of the pros and cons to that. I should maybe pull it up. The other one that we had talked about and that I had drafted out started on August 9th and kind of went with department presentations over a 6 weeks period, doing about four presentations a week. So there'd be about an hour meeting, and we looked at maybe an hour before council meeting, and then in the off weeks there would be an hour budget workshop, and we'd do another 4 departments, and that would go on for 6 weeks from about August 9th to September 13th. As we talked, and I'll jump maybe over to this document here. So those are the 2 options we kind of talked about there. A third option that came up yesterday was, well, what if on council meetings it was just council meeting, and then we did a 2-hour budget workshop on the off week? And so instead of only having 4 come in, you could have 8 departments come in and present their department budget request to the council. And so that would start, since August 9th was a council meeting, that would actually start the next week, which would be August 16th. And it still, I think, could end September 13th. But you would have a 2-hour workshop on the weeks when you didn't have a council meeting. And that would bring in eight departments to do that. After those department presentations, what we were looking at was usually mid-September to around the 20th of September is when we get our quote from our insurance company for our health insurance benefits and dental and vision and those sorts of things. So then that can be updated into the budget towards the end of September, and look at presenting that then to the council on October 11th, which we also said would be a good meeting for a statement regarding a tax increase if there was a tax increase proposed. It came up in our meeting yesterday, however, that in talking with the county treasurer, Craig McAllister, that he really would like to have data to the data center by October 8th. And mostly that's so they're proofing those tax notices and having really a sufficient time to get those through. And he has said that, and I spoke with him today as well, and Gina had talked with him yesterday. He said the 11th potentially could work, but it can become problematic. And the data center actually really wanted it by October 1st, and he says, I already negotiated the extra week. So kind of in light of that, and supposing that most of the work would have been done prior to that point, we wondered about revising the October, those 3 dates here. The 27th actually would become a date where the executive made that presentation of the tentative budget to the county council in total, so that then, rather than October 11th. October 11th could still be a tax discussion if there was a proposed tax increase. That aspect of the 11th wouldn't necessarily need to change, but if we present that tentative budget by the 27th, it really meets all notifications. It provides our deadlines, and it provides that time frame that has been communicated by our printer to the treasurer that would be most useful. And then, so it'd move a couple of those dates up, and then as far as council adopting a tentative budget and then having public hearings, those dates could still stay in place. However, I did want to talk about November 8th. That worked well for a public hearing. That is election day. It used to be that that'd be a major conflict, but with mail-in ballots, it's not as conflicting as it used to be, but maybe it still would be your preference to not have a hearing on that date. But I would invite that feedback from you guys. But this, at the end of this calendar, it was also attempting to have those hearing dates and the adoption, and then the potential for any line item veto, and then the council accepting or overriding that veto, kind of in normal council meeting business, rather than having to schedule something extra if there should happen to be a veto. Any questions? It's a short presentation. Any questions?
Yeah.
Well, may I tell you guys about the thing I made? Cameron, do you want one of these?
Yeah, that would be great.
You weren't here when I passed them. So just kind of piggybacking on what he did. The first one has 2 sets of dates. And so what I did is I went through and I looked up all the departments, and I think I got 31 or 32. Anyway, I tried to figure out what a possible schedule would look like for doing it as a council workshop on our council meeting day, starting at 3 and going till 4:30, and giving each 12 minutes each to try to get that to fit. And we'd have to start July 12th, and we'd go through September 13th. And maybe, I don't know if maybe I got extra departments than maybe Cameron you were thinking of, or anyway.
A clarification, but you'd have maybe one department head that's over multiple departments, and so I counted individuals rather than each department.
In each department, and I counted departments because I thought maybe each budget might take
Maybe
a
need
little
more time.
longer, so.
There is, I mean, that thought process has crossed my mind. We've talked about give everybody 15 minutes each kind of idea, but you would have like 15 minutes to talk about the fair budget that's like 50 grand, and you'd have 15 minutes to talk about the sheriff's budget that's like 12 million, so.
Which has a lot more to it, right?
Yeah, so there is that aspect of maybe trying to iron some of these out as well.
So I just kind of threw this together just to kind of give a look and idea of maybe what we needed to do. So the top one is if we did it on council meeting days, and the bottom is if we did it in the off weeks, and we'd need to start August 2nd, and we could have a 2-hour meeting on the off week. That would leave council meetings open for other workshops as needed. If we needed to have a workshop for something else, and it also, I was thinking of Nolan and Paul. I know sometimes it's hard for you guys to get here at the 3 o'clock time, and thought that maybe it would be good to do that. So that's a possible consideration. And then the second page is, I kind of looked at the calendar that Cameron had made and kind of thought of some other stuff. For instance, on July 11th, when the department heads file budget requests with finance, that new state law says that those actually get to go to the county council as well. And so I don't know what the reason would be that those forms can't also just be forwarded to the council, why it would need to take several days to get to us. And then one of the things too that we hadn't talked about is what is, with the new law saying that the council can have participation in the creation of the tentative budget, we didn't really say exactly what our participation would be. So we're going to hear from these department heads. I assume that we're going to then say, okay, I like that, or we like that, but we want to change this, we want to change that, we'd like to see this in the tentative budget. Since we're working with the executive, I think he would be able to say the same thing, as we need to work together to put the tentative budget. I also put for August 9th, getting workbooks to the council. That's usually when we get them, if I remember correctly, and that's the draft tentative budget. So it's not the tentative budget, it's a draft as I understand.
Right.
And I think it's important that we still have those so that we can look through those and see what's going on. In talking with Craig McAllister yesterday, as you mentioned, Cameron, he was hoping that by September 27th, the council would know if we wanted to raise the tax rate above the certified tax rate. So I put that on there on September 27th so that he could get the stuff done to mail the tax notices out by October 8th. October 25th, of course, is the deadline that if we are going to raise taxes above the certified tax rate, that we have to have a specific statement that we give in the council meeting. So that deadline is the 25th, so I added that on there as well. So I think the rest we kind of already covered, but so I just present this as maybe some other ideas of what we might want to do as a council.
Okay,
Do we have, there's been open space advisory committee meetings talking about whether we'll bond for something, and also isn't Cache County School talking about something that way too? I would like to get a really good idea of where we're looking at on some of those bonds.
Jack Drexler contacted me, and he wants to do a presentation on the 14th and tell us what that survey brought up. Remember, he was going to send out the survey, so we should get a little bit more information, be able to visit with him a little bit more on June 14th.
Do we know if Cache County School is a definite?
I haven't heard.
Last time I tried to call the guy, he was out of town and then he never got back with me and I forgot.
Last time we talked to them, they had not decided yet.
But in that open budget committee, they said that that was, one of the meetings I attended, they said the Cache County School District was pretty much back on doing one, weren't they?
That's what I've heard, but I think we checked 2 weeks ago and they said they still had not decided for sure.
I think they're wondering if we're going to do this bond too, because they don't think both are gonna pass. And so it's kind of like who's doing what and who's gonna put.
Well,
something
no,
on the
I
ballot.
would like to know that too, as we're going through this stuff, so, especially with the way the world economics is going, so.
Excuse my ignorance, what does the Cache County School District have to do with an open lands?
Just the fact of two bonds coming out for an election is the only thing.
They want to
So-
bond for middle school.
Oh, so, okay, their bond is.
I was
for
with
school.
you, Carl. I just kind of lost it.
Yeah.
Possibility of two bonds and renewal of the RAPS tax.
Yes.
Restaurant tax, you know, that has to, is to be on the ballot
Is that
this year.
this year? Because
How often does that come up?
every 10 years, as I recall.
Yeah, I thought this is the year for renewal on that,
That's right.
which I haven't heard a theme about. So, you know, this is the year, but we need, that needs to be part of this dialogue that we are preparing for this year.
Good point.
So I don't, as far as the RAPS tax goes, I don't know what stage that's at. I drafted some proposed changes and have turned that over to, I've talked about with the attorney's office, but I think it's in ordinance and review as far as I know. I haven't heard anything back.
We haven't seen
Okay,
it yet.
so I don't know what stage that's at. I don't know. How it's- Yes, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So there's three things that, you know,
Weigh on this too.
generally speaking, I know school district kind of likes to do their own things some other time, and it's usually at the busiest time of the year. They want to do it at the busiest time of the year when fewer people are even in the valley. And so they like to hit, usually theirs occurs in June. You know, they try to have that, a special election.
All by themselves.
Yeah. But
We haven't heard anything about that. Okay. Any questions or comments for Cameron, or any discussion we want to have?
all these presentations, I think these presentations be great. We can, you know, vet them, we can ask questions, but will we get their presentations, or will we get their proposals before that meeting, or is that gonna be the first time we even see it?
Before, like before these meetings that are being proposed right now?
Well, for example, when, Sean, I'll pick on you, when economic development comes in and talks to us, will we have his proposals that we can actually?
Yeah, that's the concept I had in mind. If we do something as early as July 12th, probably not. That's pretty early to come in and say, I mean, they can come in and say, hey, and maybe it would be okay with Sean. Maybe Sean would say, yep, I know exactly what I want to do next year. But for every department head to have turned in their budget request, and for my office to have that compiled to turn around and submit to everyone, that's pretty early. We haven't done that as early as July 12th in the past. That has been in August. That has been done in August in the past. If we, and as a department head, I might even say, I appreciate actually the opportunity to discuss that with the executive before I bring it to council. It can be a little awkward, and I don't anticipate this on my part, but if I come in and said, hey, council, here's my budget proposal, and you take a look at that and think, wow, this is just way out of line, and this is nuts, I don't like it at all. So then I turn to the executive and say, hey, what do you think? He's like, yeah, I think it's ridiculous too. Then I just totally, completely didn't have that opportunity to vet that out with the person who has been charged to present this budget. So as a department head, I kind of value that opportunity to say, here's what I'm thinking, and up front, I've got, maybe the council communicates priorities even of budget objectives you may have. Executive can communicate that to the departments, and then I come up and say, here's my best attempt at that initially. I would appreciate the opportunity to review that with the executive, since it's the executive who's then going to turn and say, okay, council, here is the budget that I'm proposing. I'd like to have his input on what my proposal is before I present that to council. If we don't do it after that manner and the council has it immediately, I think that lessens the value of the executive, any executive being the finance officer for the budget process.
What I'm after is I want to be able to look at something and put some questions and everything down as to what we're going to see.
Yeah.
So that I can say, hey, why this, what's going on in there, what's your rationale? I'd like to look at those things.
I think you should have that.
And then they come in and present that, then
Yeah.
to get us on the same page.
So what I'm saying is, and kind of the way I'd outline the calendar is to give that time to work on those. You wouldn't be getting the budget all at once necessarily. The official presentation, I think we both agreed September 27th would be the official, here's the turnover of the 10-year budget from the executive to the council, and it's your budget to work with in any way you see fit at that point. But certainly taking feedback before that point and presentation before that point. All I'm saying is July 12th is a bit early, in my opinion, to begin that process. I think an August timeline is better to give department heads the opportunity to really think through what they want to present, to give my office time to compile that and to tabulate what revenues would be required. If this is what everybody's going to propose, we partly will know whether that indicates a tax increase or not, and we can take a look at it initially and say, hey, why don't you go back and cut some of that, because that's not really what we're favoring at this point. And you have some time to work on that and feel comfortable with that as it's presented to council. I do think when we look at the state code 173610, as Gina was bringing up, section 2 of that, or maybe it's paragraph 2 of that section, talks about the department files that statement of revenues and expenditures with the finance officer, and it also does stipulate that that statement be provided to the council. It doesn't stipulate that that happens exactly at the same time, or that that statement is the initial draft from a department head. That's something that can be worked on and agreed on with the executive as it's provided to council.
The final proposal will be then,
So the final proposal would
September
come later.
27th.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then then in 2 weeks, as soon as we get that, we'll have 2 weeks to make a
No.
decision on thinking on if we might
No.
raise taxes or not.
No, hopefully, these presentations, again, I think they can happen before September 27th, just maybe not July 12th is all I'm saying. But I would hope that before that time, you are well aware of whether there's a tax increase proposed in here or not, and that you're well aware of the major reasons why there would be a tax increase proposed or not. I don't think that that should come to you as a surprise at September 27th. I think that participation does happen long before September 27th. And even if right now the mindset of the council is, we don't want to see a tax increase, that's important for us to have that right now and know that right now. If that was all decided right now, that's better for all of the department heads to know that than it is to
Carl, did you
work
wanna
on
share
something,
that right
present
now?
something.
I'd be happy to vote on that right now. With the amount of money that we've got floating around from all this COVID stuff, in fact, I read an article today, it was something to the tune of $350 billion.
Yeah, for
If
counties.
we raise taxes today, we make drunken sailors on shore leave look like responsible citizens. Period.
Yeah,
End of story.
yeah.
Cameron, I want to question, I disagree with you about what you're saying.
Okay.
On 2A, double I, or I think that's what it's like, 2A, let me look,
To C2 is where
2C,
it would,
where the finance officers shall make the estimate and statement described in subsection 2A available to, and it includes the county council.
yeah.
But
So-
that statement, it says, is filled out on forms that are provided. It's a statement, and to me, it sounds like it's that exact statement that is turned in by the department heads, not something that then has been taken and synthesized into some formal document.
No, I agree with you.
And I would
so
like to see
I want to
those.
clarify. No, I agree with what you just said, and I want to clarify then what you're hearing from me.
Okay,
And I've even redesigned some forms to make it clear, so that it is very clear that the same thing the departments are filing with the executive are being filed with the council. But the same way we pulled up here and we say, well, here's some ideas, let's talk about it, and I've got draft 1 and draft 2 on a budget calendar. I think it's useful for a department to say, here's my initial draft of this statement, and I want to review that with the executive before I finalize that statement and make the official filing with the executive and with the council. And I've been here for 18 years, and whether that was Lynn Lemon or Craig Butters or David Zook, as a department, I find that a useful activity to go through before I present to council. And the reason I find that is because it's that global look, and I know that then when I'm presenting to council, that I have support from the executive, so that if there's disagreement on what should or shouldn't be in a budget presentation, I know that I'm not just out there on a limb on my own. I know that I have the backing of the executive with me, and that's who I report to. Elected officers, maybe it's a little bit different. They stand a little bit more on their own than a lot of us other department heads do. But still, it is kind of useful to have that time to work through the draft. And so if you go through that section 10, 1A says that the executive, or I'm interpreting a little bit, but in our county's case, the executive files that tentative budget with the council. That means the executive owns that until it's filed with the council.
but that's not what
The
the new law
council,
says.
the new law says the council may participate. It does not say the council may direct or authorize until the executive gives that to the council. At that point, it belongs to the council, and the council can do what it will with it.
Because it says participate in the creation of.
It is
tentative budget.
participation. To come in and present, to ask input, is participation.
When I talked to the state auditor, as we did SB 162, that was not the intent. The intent was that the county council would actually participate in the creation of the budget, which does not mean we just come in and listen and the executive puts it together. It means that we work together to put it together. That's what creation means.
Well,
I have to
understand.
disagree because
I
there's not
understand
really
creation.
anything, it's really not doing anything different. If it's, and this, so
Well,
that law
that's-
changes it. That's what I'm trying to say is we participate now in the creation of the tentative budget. That's what the
I
law says.
agree with that, and I agree with that. And the state auditor's office has also said that that budget belongs to the executive until it's filed with the council. That's what the law says right here in 1736-10-1A. That's what it says. And that requirement is November 1st for that matter. Participation is that we are presenting to you. We are asking feedback before we turn it to you. That is creating the tentative budget. That is, you have every opportunity to have every question answered that you want. You have every opportunity to provide objectives and priorities that you want to see in that budget. But the law still says that that budget belongs to the executive until it is filed with the county council.
I don't see anywhere where it says it belongs
I
to
pointed
them.
it out at 1736-10-1A. On or before the first day of the next to last month of every fiscal period, the finance officer, under definitions, that's the executive, shall prepare for the next budget period and file with the governing body a tentative budget for each fund for which a budget is required.
And then number 2 says during the preparation of a tentative budget described
I've
in
read it.
subsection 1A, the following may participate.
May
in the
participate.
creation. May, it's up to us. We're saying we want to participate. We may participate in the creation of the tentative budget for a county executive council form of government, the county council, and the county executive.
So I wish some of these questions would have come up yesterday so that I'm a little more prepared than being called out on the carpet on a presentation. That's why we talked about it yesterday.
Well, we hadn't had a chance to look at what you had
You
put
haven't
together
looked at,
yesterday.
you've looked at this law long before yesterday. Clearly, you've said that many times. Participation is what we're trying to accomplish here. If on July 12th, we can come in on July 12th, if the council says, yep, we want people here on July 12th, that's fine. I'm just trying to tell you that that report on July 12th is not going to be as meaningful to the department, to you, to the executive, to anybody, as if we give it time to be worked on and presented in August. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you can't participate, not saying we won't give statements over as the law requires, not saying that we won't meet every letter of that law. We will meet, but it will be less meaningful the earlier you try to make it. Until, if you recall years ago, we tried to establish a budget committee in order to look at a budget plan moving forward. So we had a longer look at many of those issues. We've kind of been hijacked in the budget committee by COVID-19, and everything's been about CARES Act, everything's been about ARPA, but we've been trying to have participation all along, nothing new. We have tried to participate in the past, we want to participate now, we want to participate in the future. That's not new. I just don't think participation means you want all of that information before really it's ready for you to receive it.
So Cameron, what I think you're trying to say is July 12th is too early to have the information to be presented to us, but we can still participate as much as we want and look at things as much as we
Yes,
want.
yes.
But you want to move the date from July 12th to what? For the,
Of these two that were proposed here, I'm suggesting that on the bottom, that makes more sense, that August 2nd,
Yeah.
starting with those presentations makes more
Yeah.
sense than July 12th. That's really all I'm saying.
okay, that's what I'm getting from you. You're not telling us we can't participate.
Not at all.
It's just that you're telling us that you want to move the date a little bit on that. And if we're willing to, and I don't see any reason that we can't move the date a little bit.
One thing, Madam Chair, that you know as well as I do, sitting on the compensation committee, that we just absolutely, a lot of times can't get the insurance numbers.
Exactly,
Those won't come until
Exactly.
September.
yeah.
And so we'll have an update in September.
Know where we're gonna sit with insurance, and insurance is one of the major expenditures that we have. And then we can't get that until the carriers and that all come forth, and we all just kind of sit there anxious, waiting for that to come, because if we don't have to raise a whole bunch of compensation for the employees, it's a pretty sweet deal. We had that last year. I don't know where we're gonna be this year, but it doesn't come very quick.
No, it
usually
doesn't.
drags on into September, as I recall. I mean, we're gonna meet in June, as a compensation committee for the first time, but we won't have the final numbers on the insurance part of that until, later on.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think the question that Councilmember Worthen asked is an important question. I feel like I need to know the answer to that as well. I'm wondering if our attorney has an opinion about it, or if we could ask him to research it if he doesn't already.
Which question?
I think the question I heard Councilmember Worthen ask was, what does that mean? That the council may participate in the creation of that.
The first, what Cameron cited initially in 1736-10, subsection 1A, says that the finance officer shall prepare the next budget period, file with the governing body a tentative budget. The responsibility and authority to prepare that tentative budget is given to the finance officer. The council then is told that, and says that the council may participate in the creation of that tentative budget. The ability to participate does not shift the authority or ultimate responsibility to prepare the tentative budget. So I don't think that the council can dictate the process of preparation, but I think that the council may participate in the process that the finance officer goes through. That's how I read the statute. That's how Seth Ovison at the state auditor's office is. Well, he said to me, it belongs to the finance officer until it's filed with the county council, who then can do whatever they want with it. And that's exactly how I read the statute.
So what does creating, or helping in the creation mean then? What does that mean? Because creating means, right, John, it means that you're organizing, you're putting things together, you're making something out of nothing. So what does that mean then? That's what's confusing to me.
So the key phrase there that's been added to the statute is may participate. I've gone and listened to all of the legislative history. There's not a good explanation of that in the floor debates or in the committee meetings. We are left with the language. I've listened to all of the floor debates.
On SB 162?
Yes.
There
this
were no
past year.
debates in committee. I was
There
there.
Which is what I'm saying.
There was no debate.
You're exactly right. It's
Okay, I'm just
helpful-
making
it's
sure that I'm
helpful
not
when there-
misunderstanding.
Okay, let him
it's helpful
talk.
when there is debate and explanation in a committee meeting or on the floor that explains the language that's being adopted, so that when there are questions like this, attorneys and judges can go back to the legislative history and say, what was meant by may participate? There are no statements on the floor of the legislature or in committee meetings, and that's what I mean by debates, statements on the floor or in committee, that help us know what may participate is supposed to mean. So that leaves judges and attorneys to use a plain language interpretation. And a plain language interpretation of that says, finance officer shall prepare and file, and council may participate. I cannot read that to mean that council may direct the process and the executive may follow along. That's just not how the language is. The executive is to prepare and then file, and the council may participate in that process. May participate does not equal direct the process. There are statutory deadlines that I don't think that it means that the council can change the statutory deadlines and other things. as soon as that gets handed to the council may do anything with it, make any change it wants. And I think there's much wisdom in the finance officer, the executive, encouraging and promoting and facilitating participation by the council. But there's no indication that the words may participate were meant as shall now direct preparation.
Well, just from a,
And it sounds to me like there's an effort being made here by Cameron to say, let's all participate, but may participate does not mean direct.
and really from a practical standpoint, it would be extremely cumbersome and difficult to have a budget prepared by 7 council members with the limited amount of information that we have. We simply don't know what each department's needs are going to be on a detailed basis, like the executive would have, like Cameron's office would have, and we just don't know. It would be exceptionally cumbersome. You have two hours set out here. We would probably need to be here 12 hours each day in order to digest all of that information in that much detail for the council to create a budget.
If I could just say too, I value your input. Our department heads value your input. Cameron does. It's important for us to know what your thoughts are on the budget. Will you, Sean, again? If Sean comes in here and says he wants to create a program and the council says they're not supportive of it, that's important for us to know. Then if we already know the council's not supportive of that, then it would be a waste of time for us to put it in the budget. If we already know that the council's not supportive of a tax increase, then we should know that ahead of time and we can build the budget accordingly. So I absolutely want your input, and I think it's good for us to go through these meetings and have these discussions and get your input. Look forward to it.
I agree with Carl. I've not done a budget for a county, but we worked on budgets for the bank. And it took time to go through everything, and I personally don't have enough time to go through each department and look at every little line that they want to do. I appreciate that they are going to present it to us, and I agree with Councilman Erickson. I would like that information ahead of time, not having it presented at the meeting we're going to look at it. I want it ahead of time so that I know what we're going to be discussing, but I agree with Carl. It's very time-consuming.
I know as I've sat on the council and went through a lot of different budgets and that, I can remember every one of the department heads sitting down with our executives and trying to justify to the executive what they had in their budget. And sometimes it got nixed before, it even got past the executive. And then after that had come, then we got to see it as a council. And I think what we're trying to say is we'd like to have it maybe sooner, and we'd like to have it before we actually have those people come before us.
Exactly.
And I think that's possible because before they come before us, Executive Zook will have reviewed it, and he can forward that information to us, or Cameron can, prior to the meeting, because not every one of those departments are going to come in the same day. So, they know which ones are coming, and they can work on that one first. But as I understand the law, the executive or the President of the United States or whoever it is, they present a budget, and then the council in our case, or the representatives in this case of the United States, go over it. They're the ones that they're the ones that, approve the budget. They're the ones that spend the money, or they don't spend the money, but they approve it to be spent. So I guess we're not too far off, but maybe we just want to say that we'd like to have information from the departments that's going to come before us, a week before they come, so we have time to look at it. And I don't think there's any problem with that, is there?
No, that's not at all a problem.
Because if you look at this list, there's only, well, there's quite a few of them on some days, not as many on other days, but we could have that information.
Let me ask maybe a clarifying question. So before, one of the first issues that came up is that I had counted out department heads and elected officials versus each department unit that they supervise. So in my case, I'm over finance, but in the case of the sheriff, he's got a patrol division, he's got a jail division, and so forth. Do you want a time slot for each one of those divisions so the sheriff ends up having more time, or do you want to just talk to the sheriff for a certain amount?
I think the sheriff would represent the people that are under him, is the way I would look at it.
I would look at that way too. I mean, just have the department heads. I mean, rather than having a department head who's over this area and this area, have to present twice.
Just have him come up to that, okay.
I think this whole process is, to me, it's, you know, we're talking about the degree of participation, okay? I think that more participation is probably better, you know, so that nothing's withheld from us as we go along. So we do understand that process as we work through it along with you. So when we get to the book, we don't have to have another book, which I have all these copies, you know, at home,
Right?
and they're just downright boring, but, you know, they're, you
It
enjoy them.
depends on who you are.
But even last year, we have 2 books,
Yeah,
you know, because
you have to
it
update
was
it
given
after
to us
you-
once, and then all of a sudden, you know, there was a technical foul, and we got a second book. But at that point, then, I guess, then you are then under our, you know, if that's our budget at that point.
Yes.
Then we direct you what to do.
Yeah, so any amendment you want to make to it at that point, I would compile it and present it to you,
Right.
and you guys would vote on it.
Okay, but to get to that point, what we are seeking, what I'm seeking, is the understanding,
Of each
you
department,
know, that we don't have these big surprises
right?
later, which you know, we had the same questions last year. You know, the MISC accounts.
Yeah,
You know.
we've done a lot this
And
last year talking
I call
about
them slush
miscellaneous.
accounts. I call them, you know, let's pad the budget accounts, whatever, and to you, no, they're very important because they go to all these different items. We don't see that, we don't understand it because it's not visible to us.
Yeah,
We need to understand that to even give merit to what that account for them even means,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
You know, I look at that and say, well, that's a slush to where if I don't have it in this account, I'm just gonna move it over.
right.
And, you know, and and here I am back at the school district, and it just bothers me again to, you know, to be in that, because
So,
district, I would always see, we would get one budget that the teachers would see, one budget that the Board of Education would see, and then there was the school district's actual budget that no one saw.
well, I
And
have
it was
never
just
been there,
fluid.
so I can't speak
I
to
know,
that.
I'm just telling
right?
you, then it
Right.
was just fluid and it mixed, and I want to be able to say, hey, when you give us the book, okay, council, we take care of it from there. And when we see changes made, I can look back, say, oh, that change was made upon the direction of the council. Then I can feel good about voting for that.
Yeah.
So,
Well-
and that process just, I want to understand that process as we go through, so every account in there means something.
So are you, and let me be clear that I'm understanding what you're saying, so you would have all these department presentations, and you want to have their department data as they're presented, before they present, you want to have a chance to look at it, so then when they come in and present, you have some understanding, maybe some explanation of what you've seen, but also you have that opportunity to ask questions, because you've already been through it.
Right.
Is that the level you're saying is the book and no changes, or what level are you saying no
That's
changes?
them preparing for that
That's part
book.
of that, okay, that's what I understood you to say, but I wanted to
Book,
be
when, you
sure.
know,
So we would go through that process, and after that process, we would compile that budget and say, okay, after everything we've said and done,
then
here's
it's
the.
ours, and then we're responsible at that point for all the county money.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and that's the way I understand, and that's what I'm trying to explain. Not to have any difference of opinion of what needs to be available to the council, but timing of when and
Okay.
making it meaningful information when it's presented.
But that level, that measure, what we're talking about in this law, that measure participation,
Yeah,
that will be a judgment upon our executive. And I say a judgment upon the executive, not
I
a
see,
judgment.
I see.
It'll be a judgment by him, but it'll also be upon him if he
Yeah,
doesn't allow us, or
provide enough
doesn't,
participation is what
isn't
you're saying.
visible, or makes
Yeah.
everything visible to us.
Right.
So,
So, for my understanding, what's the software program we use again?
It's
Finance?
Cassell.
Cassell.
Yeah.
So,
It's Utah-based company.
so Cassell, if we're looking at this, is there a way for us to see a budget by expenditure account? What it was supposed to be, and so we set a 2022 budget, so you have, here's the budget line.
Right.
And then we can see a year-to-date expenditure
Yeah.
from that out of Cassell. And then I'm assuming in today's environment, we should be able to click on that year-to-date and be able to see what makes
all
up
makes
that
up.
account.
Yeah.
And then we can see how much is left. Now,
Right.
you're gonna develop the 2023 budget, but if we look at the 2022 budget as we're looking through things,
Yeah.
is there a way for Cassell to show the county council, rather than getting a book that almost is outdated the minute that it's printed, for me to be able to see,
You want
okay, I want to
something
look at this
online?
expenditure item, here's how much we budgeted, here's how much has been spent, here's how much is left to spend, and as far as how much has been spent, I can click on that and see the outlined expenditures. Can we do that today?
You're wanting that online, is what you're saying?
Yes.
So yes, there is, that's.
So that is
functional.
actually,
Department heads
we
have
can do that, we have the
executive-
technology.
The technology is there.
Okay.
I would caution, because I know this issue came up, so I'm going to try to speak frankly. Reclassing an expense is not nefarious inherently.
Well, Cameron, I'm just asking about technology today. I'm just asking about technology
I
today.
know what you're
Is
asking.
that available right now?
That technology is available.
Okay, how can we get that
I
done
don't
as a
think I'm on
council?
trial though, so can I explain?
No, I know,
myself?
but no, that's not what I'm asking. We got 10 minutes left, so I don't want to get off. How can we get that?
So, all of you receive a paycheck, so all of you are users already, or your employees inside of that Cassell. So I can assign you user rights so that you can have a login online and you would be able to see that. Every employee logs in. Read only.
Just
yeah.
read only.
Yeah, but when we're talking about, for audit purposes though, is where the authority.
Well,
of
I'm
the
just
council
talking
would
about
come
as we're
from.
doing a budget, it'd be great to see, hey, you've spent X through this part of the year, and
Well,
you're
and I-
coming
and I
and asking
present
for
that.
Y in 2023,
When the
why would there be a
department comes
difference?
in, that'll be part of the reports that you get for when a department comes in regardless. So that's why I'm saying as far as reclass happens, and so that may create questions for you that I don't want you to get out in the weeds on stuff. All that information you're asking for is something we would present anyway, is all I'm saying.
But
So,
we could see it in real time rather than having printed books.
yes, yes.
Okay.
That is possible.
And then another thing, Dave mentioned it, just had a quick question on some of these miscellaneous funds.
Yeah.
Just so I understand it right, this comes out of miscellaneous in general, account number 100-4960-600, miscellaneous expenses.
Yeah,
If I understand that bucket item correctly, we use that for Christmas bonuses, employee morale, bereavement type expenses, things like that. Is that correct?
employee Christmas bonus by far is the expense there, but
Okay.
yes. those are
That's
the
for
types
that.
of
We
things
don't, we
can
don't
be
use
found
it for
there.
operational type things.
not
Okay,
usually.
thank you.
That belongs, the 4960, so if we break down that account, 100 means it's the general fund, 4960 means it's a sundry expense, which is kind of the question that we're asking. 600 has that specific, this is a miscellaneous under sundry. 4960, we'd also find any type of thing like a land purchase or a judgment that the county had to pay, any of those types of things would fall under that miscellaneous bucket, so.
And they'd be the 3 digits after that 4960 for that type of stuff,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay. I was asking specifically about account 600,
Yeah.
employee Christmas bonuses,
Yes.
morale type things, and bereavement. That's what we use that account for.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So,
That's all I know.
I was circling back, kind of answering Dave's question about putting labels on miscellaneous stuff. We can have more discussion on that, but if you wanted a department titled summary judgments against the county, we can do that, but typically that's not an operational thing, so it'll fall into a miscellaneous type of a thing for the county. That's why miscellaneous exists, is for those type of things that happen once in a while. So I don't think they'll be totally gone. However, in this last year and a half or so, we've talked to department heads a lot about what is in miscellaneous intending, if not already have been doing, labeling them more clearly. So if you have a question on any department, on any account, then we have the budget transaction detail that we can.
Okay, we're going to wrap this up so that we have a little bit of break before meeting starts at 5. Does anybody have a quick question or a quick comment, or Cameron? Thank you so much for the information, and thank you for this calendar, and we appreciate all that you do. And anything else? Okay,
We'll see
thank
you
you.
in 10 minutes. How's
All
that
right,
sound?
sounds up. That sounds good. Workshop adjourned.